coming. Really appreciate it. Very excited actually about today and about the series that we're kicking off. Apologies in advance if I cough here and there, just pick something up. So it should be okay for today, but yeah, just excuse me in advance. As I said, really excited for today's session. Phenomenal panel I'm joined by. As a little bit of an introduction to myself, my name is Jack Thiel. I'm the APAC commercial lead at Mayday. Our mission at Mayday is to mend month end, beginning with the needs of multi-entity Xero businesses. So intercompany recharges, cross-entity bank recs, keeping intercompany loans in balance, all the things that our product solves today. But our session is not about Mayday. I'm not wearing a Mayday t-shirt for that reason. And there's a little bit of further background prior to my role here. I started my career as an accountant at PwC about 10 years ago, where I completed my chartered. I then worked as an advisor to SMBs for a number of years, tax, accounting, small business advice, and have spent the last 5 years working in a variety of startup roles across the Xero accounting and tech ecosystem, which I've absolutely loved. I'm passionate and bullish as ever about the Xero ecosystem, the Xero platform. It's great to be seeing so many larger businesses succeeding on it. And I'm thrilled to be here to kind of dive a lot deeper into that topic across all of the sessions, especially today with the launch. And yeah, really keen to pick the brains of some very experienced people who are working in businesses that are using Xero, people at Xero, people at other apps, and people who are advising, CFOs, FDs, and the finance teams of SMBs. So with that all being said, I think that's enough from me. I might pause here and let our amazing panelists for today introduce themselves. So if you guys are happy, I'll hand over to you, Meena, first. Yeah, go for it.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this series. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you to CFO Tech Stack and Mayday and all the apps involved in this fantastic April webinar series. A little bit about me. My name is Meena Berry, Senior Partnerships Manager for Ecosystem and App Store. That's all the small business apps that are connected to Xero. I've been in this role for about 1.5 years and at Xero for about 8 years. I actually was employee number 8 at Xero back in 2010, working with accounting practices. I've also worked for PwC, just like Jack, in one of my stints as a business development director. And I'm also passionate about small businesses. I used to work in one, running my own cafe in inner city Sydney. And that was when I first discovered Xero back in 2008, that is. So yeah, really excited to be here. Thanks, Jack.
Awesome. Thanks, Meena. Marie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jack, for having me. My name is Marie. I'm the finance manager at Scaffidi Group, and we manage and support 50 pharmacies nationwide with all of their end-of-month processing operationally and end-of-year work. And prior to this, I was in a logistics company, and then prior to that, I was an accountant in business advisory. So yeah, that's about me. Thanks, Jack.
Great. Thanks, Marie. And Daniel.
Hey everyone. Again, thanks for having me, guys. My name's Daniel. I'm working at a small kind of a boutique consulting firm called TheBeanCounters. We're really here to just help businesses kind of streamline their accounting practices. Similar to a lot of, like to Marie, Jack and Meena as well. My background is I'm chartered accountant as well. I used to work in one of the big 4 accounting firms in the audit department. But then I've also moved on to a whole series of different companies in the commercial space as well. So Aussie listed companies, multinational subsidiaries, private and private equity owned businesses, not only in Australia, but also spanning up through the APAC region and Europe as well. So seen a bunch of different companies with different systems and felt the pain that a lot of the people on the call would have felt with these systems as well.
You forgot to mention you're a lifesaver too, Daniel. For anyone who has been kind of following the series in the lead up to today, Nick Fox was going to join us, who heads up the CFO advisory space at BDO, but he came down ill this morning. So Daniel stepped up to the plate. So very thankful to have you here, Daniel. And actually to be able to fill Nick's very big shoes with someone who has very big feet is awesome. So yeah, thanks for finding the time for us at the very last minute. So in terms of the discussion today, obviously joined by some very broad experience here with people who have dealt with, Xero businesses, ERPs, scaling Xero, the ecosystem, and everything in between. I want to set the scene just a little bit more before we, pick your brains. So obviously at Mayday, we're built for larger Xero businesses. And in talking to those clients and customers of ours, we've found that they're often trying to answer a couple of key questions about their accounting tech stack. One is Xero still the right system for me? And if it is, how long is that going to be the case for? Can I invest in it knowing that I'll be able to stay on it for a number of years more? Or am I going to invest in it just to have to change, in a few months' time? So we want to kind of help to address that. In talking to those same people, we've heard that the ERP move is horrible and hectic. It can be incredibly expensive. And that's before 58% of these implementations fail. So we want to provide, I suppose, ER peace of mind, as David, our founder, has kind of coined, that, the peace of mind that knowing you can scale on Xero into your growth phase without needing to make that massive move up or delay that move as long as humanly possible to avoid the friction, the cost, the pain, I suppose, as well. So the series is really designed to help that target customer, to help yourselves who are tuned in today to understand that this isn't a product marketing webinar. There are no product demos. There's a reason I'm not wearing a Mayday t-shirt. It's because today is about righting the misconception that you can't scale on Xero into your growth phase. But equally, we don't want to overcorrect, and we don't want to claim that Xero is for every business and every situation. We know and we appreciate there are businesses that will outgrow Xero and need to move up into that ERP space. I think we're just really trying to address that group of businesses that are growing up and wondering, is it time? And often it's not time, and it doesn't need to happen yet, and it can be delayed. So we know that Xero is not an all singing and dancing panacea, but we want to highlight its strengths. We want to show its potential and kind of shatter a few of those myths. So in terms of the agenda today, it's very simple. We want to delve into the success stories of businesses who have scaled on Xero. Marie's joining us from a great example. We want to discuss when an ERP might be the right solution. So if you're wondering, we'll try and address that point as well with an example. And we want to share some advice and practical tips around scaling with Xero. So if you are, reaching some of those growing pains, then, what can you do out of today to kind of start putting things in place to, I suppose, make life better, easier, and scale further with Xero. So I might start with the story component. And as I said earlier, chuck in the Q&A if you've got any questions as we go through. We hope that you're listening to this as that target audience and you're hearing what everybody's sharing, but also wondering, how I have a follow-up question here. How did you do that? So feel free to throw that in the Q&A and we can try and get to those as we finish up. But in terms of stories around successfully scaling on Xero, Marie, maybe I'll throw to you first. Can you speak to your experience at Scaffidi? You've got 55 pharmacies you're talking about. As far as I'm aware, they're all on Xero. So can you kind of speak to your own experience making that work? And,
Yep, sure.
And do you consider it a success, I suppose?
So we've been on a journey since we went onto Xero about 10 years ago, maybe now. And so every time a new pharmacy comes into our group, there also becomes more processing, more reporting, and a whole heap of other things that need to come with that. So as a group, we want to best be able to provide reports in a timely manner to owners, board members, but also be able to have it in a strict, tight end of month deadline, so they're not getting reports 2 months down the track. So for us, we first realized there was a inefficiency with processing, just given the large scale of invoices that there were. So you can imagine when you go into a pharmacy, there's the front of the shop and then there's the back, which is all the medications. Each of those have invoices. So when you're doing 50, 55 pharmacies, timesing that by over 100 invoices every month, with a team of 4, it makes it very difficult to process invoices in a timely manner. So we then brought on HubDocs to help us with that inefficiency, which has helped us immensely in just trying to be able to process invoices in a timely manner. And then further to that, which was going all great, we then worked out that with all of our entities, we recharge, we on charge. And when we were doing that, because we have 50 pharmacies in our group, we would have to do 50 invoices on one end and 50 invoices processing on the other. And that was taking us 2 to 3 days every month. So then we realized, okay, well, here's another inefficiency and we want to better our processes. So then we linked up with David from Mayday, and he has helped us with the recharging process to cut it down from 2 to 3 days to only a couple of hours now every month. So that's helped us grow in that aspect. We then have inter-entity loans. So now we're using the balancer in Mayday to be able to quickly and easily be able to work out where there's any discrepancies in our loans and be able to reconcile them really quickly, easily. It's visual. We can see where it's not working and then be able to fix that really quickly so that we can get our reporting done timely. We then also realized that from a HR payroll perspective, that given we're a nationwide company, when a new employee onboards, it was a lot of paper going here and there, trying to get information back. So then that was our second phase of in payroll working out, well, we now need a electronic onboarding platform, which integrates into our HR software, but also integrates into Xero to help us there. So we then linked up with the guys at Worker to help us with that process. And now we're also on our 4th growth scale, which is trying to find a corporate card expense management software that can link directly into Xero to stop people having to photocopy receipts, manually entering in spreadsheets, then manually having to enter it into Xero. So we're on that journey at the moment. We're still in the DD phase, so we're just trying to find different apps that link directly into Xero. So I suppose from 10 years ago when we had just Xero, now we use 4 to 5 different app platforms, which have helped us out massively just to improve our processes. But as we still continue to grow, Xero at this stage is still the right software platform for us. And I'm sure there's still a lot of growth and other apps that we're not using that we can use.
Yeah, really, really interesting, Marie. And I think that ability to pick and choose the relevant solutions in the moment when it's needed and not having to sign up to everything on day one, but also not having the inability to move forward when you do have a pain point and having to wait for something to be built for you. There are products out there.
Yeah, exactly. And all the products have been able to integrate quite seamlessly into Xero. So we kind of do a bit of testing, work out what we need, and then it integrates and we kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah, great. I mean, Meena, maybe I'll throw to you next. Given your experience at Xero with the ecosystem, you can probably speak to Marie's experience, but also you might have some experiences of your own with seeing successful businesses grow up on Xero. So yeah, over to you.
Yeah, sure. Actually, my experience draws on when I was initially at Xero in my account manager role. So I was working with an accounting advisory firm, and they actually had a pharmacy franchise group. And that was the first large implementation that I remember, possibly in Australia, that we were taking on back then in 2012. And it was about 80 pharmacies, and they just hired a new couple of new heads in the board that were really strongly focused on the group performance and benchmarking and, really getting a really good handle of some of the sales KPIs. The challenge there was that each pharmacy was using its own different accounting ledger, and there was also an IT back office involved in doing some of the desktop backing up of data, and they were very keen to join the initial scope meetings to see, when we do switch over to the cloud, is this going to be better off in the management of all the different data systems, which we know, of course, being cloud focused, it makes it so much more easier for the actual platform to take care of a lot of that heavy lifting in backups and reliability. So the key challenge for them was around the sales metrics, and there was no integration at the time between the point of sale system that they were on and Xero. So one of the key things that they looked at outside of Xero at the time was to integrate a cloud-based point of sale system that talks to Xero. And from there, they wanted to eventually reach the holy grail of being able to know the staff member on an hourly basis, what the sales are, benchmarked against other stores and other staff members. So it took a while to actually bolt on different add-ons. There was actually quite a bit of workshopping involved initially to see, which out of the best of breed apps in the marketplace can solve those key jobs to be done or focus areas for the business. But even back then in 2012, if you think about it, there were probably only 30 or 40 apps in the ecosystem back then, as opposed to 1,000 apps on the App Store, including financial services businesses as well. So it was still early days, but knowing exactly what they were looking for and building a bit of a team around doing some of those workshops to identify what are those manual processes, how do we introduce automation before we even get to actionable insights? We need accurate information. We need to ban admin and manual processes that lead to a lot of errors. They were doing 2 weeks every quarter just on chasing up reporting, and a lot of it was based on manual data. So it was garbage in, garbage out. Nothing was reliable, and at board level, feeding that information back to the financial controller and key stakeholders up the top, it was really, becoming a bit of a friction point for the head office. So that's why they decided to look at Xero. The implementation rollout actually took between 6 to 8 months, and there was an advisor involved. And that 6 to 8 months of actually getting about 80 pharmacy groups onto Xero. They then later grew between 3 to 5 years up to 260 franchises. And the best part was that when more and more franchises were coming on, they actually had worked on their workflow and processes and systems. They started with very few add-ons initially, but over the 5 years, they started thinking about things like approval management and document management, and they started bolting on more and more add-ons. The key thing to note with businesses and industries is when we talk about scale with Xero, we're not always referring to turnover. And typically small businesses start thinking, when we are getting bigger, will turnover be the issue for Xero? And it's not really at that level. It's actually at a transactional level when we're talking about software limits and how to handle the data is where you need to think about scale and considerations rather than turnover. So that's some insights in that operationally, they were going from quarterly reporting that was quite outdated down to monthly reporting, and through certain apps. At the time, it was POSworks, Xero, and Fathom that were involved in the initial 3. They were actually able to eventually introduce benchmarking and get that group performance reporting. So it was a really successful outcome for that pharmacy group.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, the idea that Xero had 30 apps on the App Store kind of blows my mind, given how many there are now. And I think to the point around Xero's ability to scale and where those limits might be, if anyone's listening and interested in that, we actually have a separate session as part of this series on scaling specifically with Xero, and we'll be talking and addressing the limits. The kind of number limits that are physically in place there. So yeah, good point to call out, Meena, and to have 200 plus franchises under one group and under one banner is that's an achievement. So yeah, it would have been a good project. Daniel, I mean, going to you now, it'd be good to get your perspective on a success story, and then I might also lean to you to kind of give, because I know you've had some experience on the other side, kind of where you have found the limit. But let's start with the success story first, and then we can go into where the ERP side might make more sense.
Yeah, so probably one of the success stories that I've had with, and something that a lot of clients have come and approached us with regard to scaling Xero is that they're generally businesses that are on Xero right now, and they've been told or they've been given kind of direction by their owners in that they're going to be growing 2, 3, 4 times in the next 24 months, and they don't want to look at their tech stack to see that it can essentially handle that growth. What I've found is a lot of the times they've come to us and saying like, hey, we're going to be growing 3 times. Please tell us what ERP we need to move on to. Is it NetSuite? Is it, one of those other, the larger kind of businesses? What we've found is that when we actually got down into the detail and asked them exactly why they would want to change, they say, oh, we just need to do reporting. We need to do consolidations. It's not going to be too much complicated besides a few more entities. One of the examples that we've got is there was a childcare business that was privately owned, growing very quickly, purchasing many different, childcare locations across Australia. Every individual childcare would have its own legal entity and its own Xero file. They were struggling with, 30 plus Xero files, 30 plus entities in terms of doing their consolidated reporting because they were downloading everything and dumping into Excel and generating reports out of there. So it's a simple conversation of just having a look at the app, the Xero app store, finding great solutions like Fathom to be able to stitch all those, files together, create the report, satisfy the requirements of their owners, as well as keeping the accounting team on board because they love Xero, they love the streamlined processing that it can handle as well. So it's really something where the question is when you're about to scale out of Xero, like have a real question on understanding what it is you need to change before you kind of look at that conversation.
And I think it's a really good point to address is, I mean, Xero markets itself for small businesses. If you go to the website, it would say that, and it does that extremely well. But I think that has left that misconception that, okay, cool, we're going to grow 3x over the next year, so I probably need another system, without first looking at, well, Xero as a foundation might be like that, but Xero and its ecosystem is actually a very powerful device for growing businesses. So I think you're right. I mean, that's a really good, interesting discussion that you've been having. So Daniel, I mean, we do want to make sure that we don't overcorrect here and act like Xero can do anything for everyone. So do you have an experience or do you have a client or a customer that you've worked with who you can kind of say, look, we did have that conversation and we realized that X or Y meant ERP was the right way to go for them? And what is that X or Y? What is that line you drew?
Yeah, there's probably 2 main categories, which I would say that kind of drive where, the limitations of Xero kind of starts hitting that point. The first one is when there's complex or complicated ownership structures for that business. So if you have a business that has, joint ventures, different ownership percentages, that span across multiple geographies and multiple jurisdictions, legal, tax jurisdiction. That's when sometimes an ERP would generally gives you the ability to run those complex hierarchical ownership structures and do your consolidation, your consolidation and ownership percentage journals all within one system. So that's one thing I've kind of found. That's where the limits kind of get met with the Xero and the Xero ecosystem. The second thing, it's probably more on the geographical location. When you start dealing with multi-currency, where you've got multi-currency and multi-location, sometimes your multi-locations, like when you're moving into like a Europe-based countries and Europe-based entities, there are some tax and legislative restrictions. Like, for example, in France, you've got a very specific chart of accounts that you must follow. It must be done in a particular way, reported in a particular way, and it needs to be licensed by the French government. So it's like straight up there. If you're moving into that market, there's going to be a restriction with that. And that's kind of where some of the larger ERPs who have probably invested in moving into those markets and have got those licensing is where that's probably where you start looking at those solutions.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Daniel. I mean, I imagine you pay for it as well, but I think that's right. You reach that point in your growth where you have those requirements and you've got to meet them, and there's no 2 ways about it. So, I mean, is there any reason why a chart of accounts, for example, in Xero couldn't be configured to meet the needs of, the French government in that case, or anything along those lines? Can you make Xero work for those kinds of challenges?
Yeah, it's doable. So it's not saying that you can't. So what you'll essentially have is you'll have a separate chart of accounts that is in Xero for that French entity, let's say. And there's different, I think France has a different one, Germany has a different one, Belgium has a different one. A lot of the European countries have a bit of a unique one. Whereas you'll notice like APAC countries, America, Australia, they kind of follow a more standard IFRS, like as long as you follow the accounting rules, you should be okay. What I find with having the multi chart of accounts is when you're trying to consolidate that. So a standard French chart of accounts, not a problem. But then when you've got a group accounting team who has to know 6,000 is your cash account, 5 in France, but in Australia, US, and every other country, it's a completely different chart of accounts. That's when you start having friction with your accounting team because they have to maintain multiple accounts, multiple names, multiple requirements.
Yep, cool, awesome. No worries. Thanks, Daniel. So what I want to do now is kind of move on to kind of part 3 of the discussion today, which will kind of then lead into wrapping things up. We'll go over quickly the webinars that are coming up for the remainder of the series, and we'll address any questions that are unanswered. So, I mean, from an advice, practical tips perspective, scaling with Xero, I mean, Marie, you've obviously stuck with Xero. You've made it work at Scaffidi. You've bolted on a few additions. How do you go about researching the relevant add-ons? You're going through that process now. You're doing your DD around the card management. Feel free to come along to our spend management session as well to go a little bit deeper on it. But yeah, what's your process there? You've successfully rolled out a few additions. Have you tested them, tried them out? Where did you find them? What's your experience been there?
So we kind of talk to like-minded people, I suppose. In the industry, we talk to our external accountants. We're on a couple of forums on LinkedIn. And from there, we just kind of ask the question of, what are people, this is what we need, like, and then what are people using and how have they found it? And then we kind of do a bit of research ourselves. We link into the relevant parties that we're looking to use. And then from there, we kind of just try to understand which app is going to offer us the best solution to our current pain point. And excuse me. And then from there, we go into a bit of a testing phase to see, will this actually work? So for example, like Mayday, I'll use that as an example because that was our most recent add-on for the recharger purpose. We kind of found David, we linked into him. He gave us a bit of a scenario on how Mayday will work, how it fits into Xero, and then we kind of went on a bit of a journey with trying to work out from a recharging point of view, how best can we use that to bolt onto Xero to then assist with our recharging. So we went through a couple of ideas and scenarios, and then we found one way which we can do it, which is coding to specific dumping accounts, and then those accounts recharge out. So when we started, we only had a few rules, and I think now we're up to like 1,200 rules at the moment. So we just try to work out where our pain points are, and we tackle it a little bit at a time for us. And we just kind of tackle one scenario at a time and just see what's the best. What are people using in the market currently for similar scenarios?
Thanks, Marie. Meena, did you have a comment to add to that?
Actually, I was just thinking back to what made some of these large group transitions a success on Xero. And I think sometimes what can get in the way, if you can address it early, is the change management piece. And it's well and good to have 1 or 2 key members being the champion of the project and getting really excited about moving across to a new system or a bunch of systems. But if, say, the finance team are not on board, or the payroll team aren't on board, or whichever team, it can be a massive source of friction. So one of the things that I noticed about that group that was really successful is that they took up trials, they did a lot of workshopping, they picked out their key champion that were going to be the subject matter experts on that app, to communicate the findings and share it with the rest of the team. And then we actually did like a company-wide demonstration to all the franchisees of the new system, the base accounting core platform. And And it was a really big thing to get that buy-in from the people that will be interacting with the system. So I think that was just a highlight for me, is that all of this is great, but change management is a focus area for scaling up. You need to kind of consider the ones that are not that great at embracing change and how you're going to really address and workshop that.
Yeah, no, great point. Absolutely, change management's key. And hearing from Marie's side before, something that came to my mind was working with the apps that you're looking to bring on or that you're exploring too. You know, once you've got that buy-in from the team, once you've decided to, you know, explore something, you know, as you did, Marie, working with David to kind of understand, okay, you know, how do you guys see this working for us? This is our challenge. These are our pain points. How do you solve them? You know, if you are a large business on Xero, which is the target audience here, a lot of the apps will be willing to work with you on this kind of stuff. It is one of the benefits of having a certain size and scale, is that they can justify a bit more time helping you on the front end to understand your needs, a bit more time helping you to onboard and get set up. So leverage that. You know, make the most of that assistance. These people who work at apps, they know it inside out. They should be able to help you to make sure it rolls out nice and sweetly as well. So, I mean, Meena, before I go to Daniel for a kind of final question, was there anything else that you wanted to add around, you know, you mentioned earlier how the Xero app ecosystem's gone from less than, 40 to over 1,000. So, you know, what do you see as the best way for people to connect with that ecosystem, identify the solutions that they need, and yeah, get them rolled out?
Yeah, sure. So apps.xero.com. Firstly, if you don't know where the Xero Marketplace is, that's the landing page for our App Store. We also have regional landing pages, so you can look up your, whether you're in Asia, whether in UK, AU, and you're working with the apps that are integrated for that region. We do features of the month, which are staff recommendations, so you can see the apps that are coming up recommended by Xero, but we also do industry based collections and functional or jobs to be done based collections as well. So you get a really good overview of if you're looking for accounts payable automation, or if you're looking for something in healthcare. We split it by industry as well as job function. Then trialing apps, where trials are available. Most of our apps do offer trials on the App Store. That's obviously a really good place to start, whether it's 14-day or 30-day trial. Definitely make use of that. Connect with the support team of the app. There's also cloud integrators, which doesn't get talked about enough, but I think these guys are specialists in the industries. And for anyone who's after a bit more information on any particular specific type of cloud integrators, they usually work with, whether say be a hospitality industry, or they're working with trades and constructions, and they've got experience of a number of apps and implementation. So they understand scoping a project really well. Especially if you're a scale up, or if you're looking for an ERP replacement, you may need to engage apps themselves, but also someone who does the hand holding of an implementation project to offer you that specialized assistance as well.
Great. Thanks, Meena. I guess my final question, Daniel, before we kind of wrap up and go to questions, is around, I suppose, maybe from an advice and practical tips perspective, but also maybe a little bit from an experience standpoint. You spoke before about a successful business on Xero. You've spoken also to where maybe an ERP is the right move. Have you actually seen, which I appreciate isn't really advice or practical tips right now, but I'm just curious, have you seen it go the other way from an ERP decision that was made? Maybe there was some sunk cost there. There was a fair bit of investment, but it didn't work out and a business has gone back to Xero. And if that's the case, maybe, any practical tips around making that decision and coming to terms with the sunk cost, because I think there's that fallacy of like, look, we've invested so much already, we can't afford to go back, but maybe you can afford to go back. Yeah, just curious to get your take.
Yeah, no worries. In terms of practical tips and scaling, I'd probably just add a little bit to what Meena was saying with regard to change management. I think one of the best things with Xero and its ecosystem is to get people to buy in, is to actually get them. And I know I personally do it, and I see a lot of our clients do it as well, is they want to get their hands dirty. They want to click, they want to feel, they want to use the system. The beauty about Xero and a lot of the solutions, like let's say a tool like Mayday, you can spin up 2 or 3 Xero files very quickly for a very low cost. You can spin up a Mayday connection and essentially play around with dummy data, pretending as if it's your business. And you get the people who are down, in the trenches doing the work, playing with that system on their computer, on their screen. They're literally clicking on things and doing things as if they're pretending it's their live data. I find that gets them signing up a lot quicker because everyone can kind of watch a pretty presentation with nice PowerPoints and videos, but until you really get in there, click there, process a few invoices, process a few intercompany transactions, you won't really get a good feel. So I'm finding that Xero, and its ecosystem allows you to do that very quickly. So definitely, get their hands dirty, get the people's hands dirty who are going to be making the decisions.
Cool. That I might use that as an opportunity to basically wrap the core conversation and just quickly move over to what's coming up for the rest of the series. Obviously a ton of gold in here. There's a lot more still to come. I'll probably need to sit down and rewatch it, to be honest, to make sure that I get everything that you guys have said and absorb it all. But yeah, I'll just quickly run through, just for the sake of everybody who's tuning in and curious, because I know there's been some questions coming through that will probably be answered in some follow-up sessions that we have. So obviously today is a starting point. We have had some great guests, some great panelists. Thank you all for coming and joining, but we have plenty more lined up. So the next session, which is on the 15th of April, so we wanted to launch a little bit earlier, start spreading the word. But the first session, or session number 2, sorry, is optimizing Xero for scale. So to the points around Xero's limits, we're going to be addressing that. The technical limits, I suppose, you should be aware of, but also we'll be addressing how you can get around those as well, leveraging the ecosystem. So we've got some great speakers on that one. We've then got automating multi-entity month-end. Not all big Xero businesses are multi-entity, but many of them are. Whether you're a group because you're a franchise, hospitality group, property group, there's a lot of reasons why you might have multiple Xero files, along with just being a large business, multinational, with the relevant challenges there. So that'll be a great session. We've got streamlining spend management. So Marie, feel free to come along to that one. Obviously discussing what it looks like to manage that process internally. Obviously, as your team grows and your spend management needs grow with it, this will be a great topic to delve deeper into. We also have automating AP operations. So for relevant businesses, your AP, your relevant controls, the efficiencies there, we're going to touch on that as part of this session. We have executing complex HR and payroll too. So as your team grows, as your needs around HR compliance and payroll grow too, obviously this will be a great session. Xero has payroll, so we'll be discussing what Xero does really well, how you can grow on Xero as long as possible, and then where that line might be that you'd want to be looking for a solution like an employment hero, for example. We then have enhancing multi-entity consolidations. So that's come up a few times today around one of the challenges that you begin to have as a group on Xero is how do I pull all of that data together, consolidate it, and then report on it. So we've got a few different sessions that are covering consolidations, reporting, and forecasting. So you'll see that soon, but this is the consolidation session. We've got navigating and optimizing for foreign currency. As your business grows, as you begin to transact in other currencies, how do you minimize the risk? How do you maximize your gains? What are the best platforms to use? What does Xero handle really well from a foreign currency perspective? And where do you need to look to the ecosystem to grow further? We've got leveling up your management reporting. As discussed today, another key topic, another really key element to once you've got your data in a really good spot, once you're humming in terms of your processes, it's then time to begin looking and analyzing those numbers to a greater degree. So how can you do that with Xero? What's Xero reporting doing that's really great? And then how can you take that up a notch as well using the ecosystem? We've got managing large-scale inventory. So for inventory-based businesses, if this is an area of focus for you, if you are a business that has a lot of inventory, this will be a no-brainer. Absolutely come along. We'll delve into the opportunities there. We've got strengthening financial controls with bigger businesses, more transactions, more team members involved. It's one of the key things that comes up is how do I make sure that the right people are signing off before a payment goes out the door. So we'll be discussing all of these things, what you can do well on Xero as a starting point, and then at what point you'll need to add on another system. And then our final webinar is going to be preparing powerful forecasts and models. This is a nice place to finish. Once everything else in your system is up and running, once you've got your controls in place, you're optimizing here, you've got efficiencies there, the system is chiming, then you want to begin looking forward. So where are we going next? What do our forecasts look like? And how do we get that with Xero as our foundation? So really interesting topic. All of them should be interesting. Some fantastic panelists. I haven't talked to them all right now because there's about 48 of them in total. But we're trying to bring in a mind from an in-house finance role. So somebody who's there on the ground doing this every day in their business, an expert third party, someone like Daniel who's advising these businesses, who's working with CFOs and financial directors, who's done it themselves, who knows the Xero ecosystem quite well too, and then a vendor related individual. So someone who's working at an app that is dealing with this every day, who has hundreds or thousands of these customers who are dealing with these challenges, and then getting their perspective as well. And then that wraps up the series. So that wraps up today's session pretty much as well. I don't see any particular questions in the chat, but I'll leave it open just for a second while we do that. I might just throw to you, Marie, very quickly. For you, what are the telltale signs that you might need to begin exploring a Xero add-on? How did you determine the sufficient level of pain in your process that it was time to start looking elsewhere?
Well, for us, it was more we have a tight end of month deadline in terms of we need to close our books on around the 7th or 8th of the month, and then we just have a really tight window to then be able to provide board reporting and other reports to owners and board members. So for me, it was, okay, well, I've got this tight deadline. Why is something taking me 3 days? I don't want to be three days spent doing this one thing. How can I use a Xero add-on or something that can help me reduce that time so that then I can spend my time adding value to reporting or making decisions or other beneficial topics that will help the organization continue to grow and improve operationally versus me doing a mundane task, which is not really going to add any value. So for us, it's more, how can we limit our time on doing these tasks so that then we can spend time doing fun things as such to better add value and to help owners and board members make informed judgments and decisions in a timely manner.
Yeah, great. Good questions just come through in terms of the suggested add-ons, or I suppose the add-ons that you guys are using or recommending. I mean, Meena, you might have to pick from an example, but Marie, I know you kind of addressed it earlier, but if you can just rattle off the add-ons you're currently using, and then Daniel, maybe the add-ons that you often see for bigger businesses. But yeah, Marie, maybe you go first.
Yeah, sure. So currently we use HubDocs to assist in our AP function for invoice processing. We use Worker to help with our employee onboarding. We use Mayday for recharging and inter-entity loan reconciliations. And we're now on our 4th journey of trying to find a credit card expense management software, but we haven't found. We're still in the DD phase, so we've got a few products that we are currently looking at, and hopefully we'll make a decision shortly.
Cool. Daniel?
Yeah, and all those apps are something that a lot of our clients are using right now. But just to add, when you start getting to those like bigger multi kind of file approaches in terms of Xero, it's all about reporting and the pain around reporting, because that's where most of those businesses feel it. So things like Fathom, to be able to stitch together multiple files, generate really quick management and board reports in a timely manner, and in a way that's pleasing to the eye as well. It kind of looks like there's some insights that come from those off-the-shelf reports is really good. But if people need to do a little bit more customization in their reporting, tools like FP&A, it's relatively new to the marketplace as well, which lets you build really custom reports in different ways through Excel while using live data feeds from Xero.
Great. Meena, I know you're probably representative of the ecosystem as a whole, so I won't make you pick your favorites, but obviously, well, maybe not obviously, within the Xero App Store, there is a staff pick section. So that can be a good place as well to go to see what Xero's team are seeing. I don't know if there's a science that goes into that, but is that a good place to start, Meena, if people are wondering, what's out there, what should I see?
Absolutely. Often we take into account user reviews as well, and some really amazing case studies. We also have a section for new and noteworthy apps. So it's not always about the loudest and the ones with the most connections. It's also about really innovative apps in the marketplace as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Meena. We've got another question that's just come in. I'll just read it out, and if anyone feels like they can answer it, jump in. But also, if it's a bit too technical or we need more clarity, just let me know. But it's basically saying, look, Xero is originally meant for SME or small businesses. Hence, it is defaulted where approvers view all documents. Does it mean that the only way to adopt in scale for businesses which have many departments or functional areas is to add in other apps? Would we say yes to that? Would we, is there any thoughts, comments?
I would say the more multi-level authorizations you're needing, the more team members involved, absolutely. You'd have to look at apps like ApprovalMax for an example.
Yeah, and we've got that session on strengthening financial controls, which might be a good one to attend. So feel free to register for that. I think we might wrap it up there. We're right on time, if not a couple of minutes over, and it's been a really amazing session. So thank you all for coming. Thanks to Marie, Meena, Daniel for joining us and being panelists and for sharing your insight. Daniel especially for coming in at the very last minute and saving the day. But yes, it's been fantastic to get all of your perspectives, to see it from different angles, from in-house, from Xero's side, and as an advisor level. So yeah, thank you all, and thanks everybody who registered, who came along, listened in. There's heaps more sessions to come, so we hope to see you there. And yeah, thanks again, and good luck building your enterprise level system on Xero. Cheers. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye.